That time I accidentally stole from a Michaels to avoid a serial violent predator. This happened in 2013 when I was around 12. My mom moved me and my siblings in with my grandparents because we did not have enough money for rent at the time and she needed to save. It wasn't a big deal, though. They had plenty of room, and I got to spend a lot of time jewelry making with my grandma, which in my little eyes was such a win that I didn't even realize we were that poor. It was our little pastime after school, and one of my favorite parts was the trips we would take to Michaels to get beads and materials occasionally. Michaels, for those who are unfamiliar, is a craft store similar to Hobby Lobby, and walking around in it is a little girl's dream when it comes to DIY stuff. One day in the late fall, we realized we had run out of wire for a bracelet I was making for my mom, so we headed out to our local Michaels to get more. This particular day was in winter, so it had already begun to get dark by 5 p.m. My grandma, having vision problems and a bad hip, entrusted little me to run in and grab the wire and pay for it, as we had done so many times together before. I was stubbornly independent, so she wasn't very worried about me. She parked right in the handicapped spot in front of the store. The sun was setting, and the light from the big storefront windows illuminated her car behind me as I walked inside. As I was standing by the display at the front, entranced by some Christmas decor or something, a man walked in through the sliding doors. I noticed him immediately. It was hard not to. He was tall. I think I may have just been short, maybe in his mid-30s with dark hair and wearing all black from head to toe. His clothes were a bit dirty, and I distinctly remember a big red D1 logo on his hoodie. He had his hands shoved in his pockets and walked briskly into the store, almost frantically. I just watched him. He made eye contact with me for a bit too long and then continued deeper into the store. I was immediately weirded out, but thought nothing else of it and went off to find the wire. I found my spool of wire, but getting distracted in the toy section was where I fucked up. That's when I noticed him start to follow me around. From aisle to aisle, I would be browsing, and he would just appear at the other end, fake looking at stuff. He was muttering to himself constantly. You know when someone says something out loud expecting a response, but they aren't really directly looking at you, like that. As a kid, you don't really realize what's happening immediately, so I just awkwardly walked away from him each time, pretending to not notice him. In my little brain, I reasoned that he wasn't following me, and walked all the way across the store to the wedding aisle to look at some stuff I had seen when I first walked in. I figured there'd be no way he'd follow me there, but sure enough, while looking at the invitation cards, I got a spine-chilling feeling. I turn around and there he is, right behind me, back to me, doing something. He was messing with something in his pants. Doing something really vile to himself. I had never seen anything like that, and the sunken eyes he looked at me with still haunt me to this day. It took me a minute to process what I had just seen, but once I did, I immediately booked it out of the store as fast as I could. Jumping into my grandma's car, she seemed startled by my sudden appearance and asked what I got. I tried to explain what had just happened when I saw him appear in the sliding door in front of us, and the dread I felt at that moment was indescribable. He approached our car, obviously recognizing I was with my grandma, and knocked on her window. I hadn't been able to explain myself in time before she cracked the window and asked him if everything was okay. The man gestured to me with that same crazy stare and said something along the lines of, "She's a thief, she stole from there." I was mortified that he was trying to make her suspect me, on top of everything else he had just put me through. Thankfully, my grandma got the same vibes I did because she politely told him to back away and rolled the window up while locking the door. He suddenly yanked at her door handle, then swung both his arms up and started banging down hard on the car's roof, causing us both to jump and me to start crying. My grandma slammed on the reverse and peeled out of there. I've never seen her drive so fast. I don't remember much after that, just crying and holding a $17 spool of wire in my hands that I hadn't paid for. We called the police as soon as we got home, and luckily they immediately took it very seriously and requested the videotapes from the Michaels. A few weeks later, my grandma told me that they had found him. They mostly left me out of the investigation besides taking my statement so as not to traumatize me any further, I guess. She got the dent in her car fixed, and that was that. It wasn't until a few years later that my mom finally told me what had happened to him. It turned out he already had one battery charge and 2 sexual assaults on his record, one even being from a minor relative of his, like his niece or something. He had just gotten off work from the gas station across the street when he must have seen me walk into Michael's alone. I don't know what would have happened if my grandma hadn't locked her door, or if she had been in there with me, vulnerable to that man as well.